Hey YouTubers, it's Valerie with Money Mindset Coach, and today I want to talk about something that it's bothered me for quite a while, but with the statistics of how many people do this, it's probably of interest to all of you. I'm talking about texting. We all have our phones, and there are 5 billion people worldwide that have cell phones. 3.5 billion text. I think it's probably more than that. I would think almost everybody who has a cell phone that's able to text, I think they do. I wouldn't be surprised if that number is quite higher. But I have wondered about etiquette when it comes to text messaging. And I gotta tell you, okay, when you think of the history of communication, for years and years and years, it was letters. You know, if there was somebody in the military and they were in another country, the mail coming every day or week or however often it came, a letter from home, a letter from a family member, their wife, whatever, it meant everything. They were waiting for that letter, for that communication. But even back, in the 1800s and farther back, I mean, with the start of this country, people were in covered wagons unless you lived in a big metropolitan area. In the East, it was Boston, and, some of those cities sprang up, so there were a lot of people. But until the telephone was actually invented, I'm a big Laura Ingalls Wilder fan, and the only way that they communicated when they got in that covered wagon and they went from Wisconsin to Minnesota, I mean, they were really far away, and by covered wagon, how long would it take? It could take weeks to get there, so that was not a trip that was done very often, if at all. I think of being a grandmother, and back then, grandparents, if their kids left with their grandchildren, it could be years before they would see them. There weren't pictures that could be sent. It was an expensive thing to sit down with a photographer once there were them. I mean, that was an expensive proposition. And then to send a picture like that, it was just a different world. So here we are in the 21st century. We all have phones, where it used to be the only person that had a car phone was a doctor. J.R. Ewing in the show Dallas had a car phone, but they were rich. You had to be rich. You had to be a doctor. You had to be a lawyer. You had to have a reason to have a phone in your car. That was very unusual. Now, we all have phones in our cars with us all the time. And along with that comes texting. There are a lot of that communication with dating. You've got the dating profiles and you message each other. There's Messenger, there's your text on your phone. People talk by text much more. It is the number one way of communicating nowadays. It is not talking on the phone to somebody. That is not the number one way. I forgot about this, but when we moved from Chicago to Central Illinois, my grandmother and my mother wrote letters to each other, because back then a long-distance call was expensive. And the thing is you wouldn't know how much that call cost you until you got your bill. I think you could call the phone company and they could tell you how much it was. But the person who was paying was the person who was calling, unless you were calling collect or you were calling person to person. So if that person wasn't there, you didn't get charged. Yeah. I mean, it was a whole different world. And I remember that world. My kids don't really remember that world, but I remember that world. I remember the world of payphones. If you were out and about and you had to call somebody, that is how you did it. You didn't have your cell phone. You had to go find a payphone somewhere. And you had to have change. And I think it was a dime for the longest time to call somebody. But if it was long distance, you had to have change to be able to put in there, because the operator would tell you how much you needed to put in to be able to talk to this person wherever you were talking to them from. And so it's crazy. It was crazy. Yeah, it's like things have changed so much in the way of communication. But the purpose of this video is actually to talk about the etiquette of texting. And I don't think that all of us know what that etiquette is. Maybe there's a book that's been written about it. I have no idea. But there are 9 different things when it comes to etiquette in texting. So I think this can help all of us. I know it can help me, because I haven't always been really good at text messaging. But number 1, there's 9 of these. Number 1, be clear and respectful. Get to the point without being abrupt. I have been told that I can be abrupt. I want to know something, so I just text somebody, hey, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I can be abrupt. Use proper spelling and punctuation, which clearly matters. I don't think a lot of people even know what correct punctuation is anymore. I really don't know if they even know that. Avoid sarcasm unless you know the person will understand it. I grew up with sarcasm. I don't like sarcasm, but that is very true. If you are texting somebody and they are not going to get your sarcasm, it's not going to go over. It's not going to go over very well at all. And they might even take offense to it. So, respectful timing. This is really important. Avoid texting too early in the morning or too late at night. When I was in real estate, I would not text anybody before 9 o'clock in the morning. I would not text anybody after 9 o'clock at night. And the same went for my clients. If they were texting me after 9 o'clock at night, I would respond to them after 9 o'clock in the morning. Because, some people just don't, they might not look at the clock. They might not even know what time it is. And you have to be conscious of the time. And so this I totally agree with. Don't expect an immediate reply. People may be busy. My mom, oh my gosh, when she got her first cell phone, she drove me crazy. I don't think she was a big texter, if I remember right, but if she would call me and I didn't answer, that changed the world too, because now your phone is with you all the time. When you had a landline, even before answering machines, you would go to the store. Nobody could get a hold of you. You came back home. If somebody had tried to call you and it rang and rang and rang, say before answering machines, they took that as, oh, they're not home. And usually people, when they would call like that, they would maybe let it ring 10 times. Because, people can be other parts in the house. You didn't have it on you. You had to go to where your phone was, which in most houses, there was a phone in the kitchen, on the wall. That was where the main phone was. I know as a kid, we never had a phone in the living room. The main phone that everybody answered was in the kitchen. So that was an interesting thing. But now that our phones are literally on us all the time, everybody kind of feels like we should be accessible all the time. And that's not always true. You can be in the middle of doing something. You could be doing the dishes. You could be, I'm wanting to get in there and finish painting my guest room in the room behind me. I'm not going to be able to stop and answer the phone. I'm not. So there are other things that other people are doing. So don't expect an instant reply when you text someone. Keep it appropriate. Number 3, avoid oversharing, gossip, or sensitive topics over text unless you're close. There can be certain things that can be said when you're getting into some of these things that can be taken wrong. So it's better to do a face-to-face, in person or on an actual phone call for some of these things. For serious matters, consider a call or face-to-face. That's exactly what I said. Things can be taken wrong. Because it used to be, you know how the term was read between the lines? It's very true. I could get a letter from someone, and you know what? It could depend on the mood that I was in when I read the letter to how I would take something that was said. It's there's a lot that can be misconstrued by the written word, which now is not letters anymore, it is text. Number 4, using emojis or abbreviations wisely. I had a real estate client that used emojis more than she used words. And I'm reading this text and I can't figure for the life of me what she's trying to say, because I was supposed to know what all these emojis mean. And there have been times where I have used an emoji and one of my kids will say, "Mom, that means this," when I thought it meant something else. So, there can be different things that you think it means and actually things that it does mean. So you have to be careful what emojis you use. You have to be careful on how many you use, because you don't want to overdo it. I think I keep mine to a limit of maybe 3. Maybe. I tend to like to use them. And so I have to watch that I don't use too many. Then I had a boss who abbreviated everything. And I would get a text message from her, and I'm trying to figure out what she's saying because I don't know all these abbreviations. Not everybody understands all of those, like LOL and ICYMI. I don't even know what that means. That's a new one for me. But know your audience. And if I use one of these abbreviations and I send a text to my kids, I know they're going to know what it is. But if they send an abbreviation to me, I might not know. It all depends on how old you are. And I've learned a lot of them. I have. But some I'm looking at and I'm trying to figure out what it is. I think you can go to Google and you can put it in and it'll tell you what it means, and I have done that. Number 5, ask before calling. I have a friend, and if we're both working on the same day and it's kind of slow where I work, and it can be slow with what she does too, what I will do a lot of times is I will text her and say, can I call you? Because then she'll tell me, oh yeah, I'm not busy. Anytime, go ahead. And that's usually what I do. And that just gives them a head up of saying, oh, she wants to call me. If it's a busy time, they can say, no, I'm really busy. I'm in the middle of something. Call me at such and such time, or give me an hour. And that really helps a lot, because someone might be busy. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Number 6, don't spam or ghost. This is interesting. I never thought of it as spam before. It says don't send too many messages in a row if a person hasn't responded. Give them time. Now, it doesn't say here how long you're supposed to give them to respond. But I really truly believe this, and I just thought of this. Okay, Dr. Phil always would say, you teach people how to treat you. Okay, if you get a text message from a certain person and you answer immediately, that tells them, that's teaching them that, oh, when I text this person, they're going to answer like that. Well, maybe you don't want them to think that. Maybe you want to have a little bit of time to go by before you respond. You know, sometimes it's not good to respond immediately. Now, with Messenger, if you look at the message, it'll show that you saw it. Some people, if they know that you saw the message, they expect you to respond to it. Maybe not. Maybe you're looking at it, you see it, but you haven't yet, you don't have the time to really respond. That's another thing. And then if you don't want to continue a conversation, politely close it. Don't just disappear. And I've had times where I have been talking to somebody and you kind of go back and forth a few different times, and then you get to the point of like, okay, are we going to be doing this all day? Or you don't have time. You don't have time to keep going back and forth. You don't want to ghost that person. You don't want to just all of a sudden not say anything, because that isn't going to go over very well with the person that you were talking to, because all of a sudden you just fell off. You don't want to do that. I will try to say, and I got to get better at this, but I will try to say, hey, I've got to go to the store, or I've got to get started on this. I will talk to you later. And they're good at that too. They're like, oh yeah, I'm at work. I've got to get back to it. That's a good thing. That lets you know that yes, you heard them. Yes, you said goodbye. Now, I have to say, with my boyfriend, we have the good morning text, we have the good night text, and we have the evening phone call. That is our routine. So I know when he texts me in the morning, and I text him back, or I text him first and then he texts me, that's all the conversation. My boyfriend is not a text conversation person. He wants to say what he's saying, and that's it. If we're having a longer conversation, it is not going to be over text. It's going to be a phone call. That's just how he is. I could text more. And have an actual conversation, you know, because when you're texting, you can actually do other things while you're talking to this person. When you're on the phone with somebody, and this really annoys me, and I mean, I've done it too, but you know, I can be talking to my sister and she's washing the dishes. Well, you hear a lot of noise in the background. I don't tend to like the noise in the background. So when I'm talking to somebody, I tend to give that conversation my complete attention. I try to do that. That's not always possible, but I try to do that. And so that's a good thing. Group text. Oh my gosh. I have done group text where my kids are in it, other relatives, that kind of thing. I have done that. And sometimes, this goes back to my boyfriend again, he does not like group text. So I don't put him into it. Because when he's at work, he's a surgical tech, he cannot have his phone going off all the time when someone else is saying something. That doesn't go over with him. So I usually do not put him in the group. It's not that I don't want to, but I will let him know what's going on and who's in the group and what everybody said at another time. But I do not put him in group. So that goes to point number 1. Be mindful of who's included. Because I know he doesn't like group text, so I'm not going to put him in one. Don't blow up the thread with unrelated messages. Yeah. There can be a group text. There's a reason for the group text. It's not good to throw something else in there that has nothing to do with what the group text is about. And I've seen experiences. I've seen examples of this. And it doesn't go over well. People don't want that. That's not why they're in this group text. It's not what they want to hear. And then it says use reply privately if it doesn't concern everyone. That's very true. Number 8, match the tone. If someone keeps it formal, don't reply with memes or slang unless they do too. Mirror their tone for a smoother interaction. We don't want to get into arguments. We don't want to. There's just certain things that we just don't want to do by text. But yeah, memes are good in certain instances, but they're not always. They're not always. I never send those. My kids tend to do that. They like to do that, but I don't tend to do that. Number 9. Last one, use reactions thoughtfully. If your phone allows message reactions like liked or laughed at or loved, use them as a quick acknowledgement, but don't rely on them for every conversation. I get a lot of that. It lets them know that they saw it. It lets me know that they liked it or they loved it or they thought it was funny. That's nice in the instance. But that's not a way to keep a conversation. That's not really part of a conversation. And I don't even know if my phone even has that function. I don't even know if it does. But just to recap, all 9, be clear and respectful. Respect the timing. Keep it appropriate. Use emojis and abbreviations wisely. Ask before calling. Don't spam or ghost people. Group texts. Be careful who you put in them. And then match the tone of the person that you're talking to. And then use reactions thoughtfully. I just really, really love this whole thing. Oh gosh, there's a whole nother video that I could do on this about just texting family. But I have to say, I'm just going to say one more thing. For all the dating people out there, and I mean, I was one of those, late 50s, got divorced, and I was online dating, and oh my gosh, that was the hardest thing when it came to texting, because you don't know this person. You're only getting to know this person. And you would text, and my kids have been through the same thing. They're like, well, I sent a text and I haven't heard anything back. I thought we had a good time. Why aren't they texting me back? I think there needs to be a whole texting etiquette for newly dating people. I really do. Because that is uncharted waters. You don't know these people. You don't know if they like to text. You don't know if they'd rather like a phone call. You don't know them enough to something that they say. You might take it the wrong way because you don't know their sarcasm or their sense of humor yet. There is so much that when you are first getting to know somebody that you don't know and that could be taken the wrong way, you know? I feel for those people. My boyfriend, I was lucky. He would text me regularly. I didn't have to worry about him texting me. And that was peace for me because I knew he would. I didn't have to worry about if or when I would hear from him. I knew. And I knew that very early on. And that made all the difference. And even my therapist that I went to after my divorce, she told me, she said, that is the structure that you need. I needed to know he would text me. I needed to know when. And he was kind of the same way. So we didn't have that. Is he going to text? Is he not? Is he going to say something? Is he going to call me back? I didn't have to worry about any of those things. And I have to say, we have been together. In July, it will be 9 years. And I have to say that I could count on one hand the nights that he has not called me, that I have not gotten that evening call. On one hand, in almost 9 years, we talk every night. Maybe we don't have a lot to say. He was actually here Monday overnight into Tuesday. He leaves at 5 o'clock at night to drive back to St. Louis. And then he calls me that night. A couple hours later, he calls me. And it's like, we had spent the last 2 days together, but he calls me. And did we have a ton to say? No, because we just spent the last 2 days together. But the security of that, and he does the same thing when I leave his house and I come back here, and we may have been together for 3 or 4 days. He calls me. When I get home, I text him to tell him that I got home so he knows. I text him when I'm on the road and on the way so he knows when I left. You know, there's certain texts there's reasons for them. And a lot of the texting that we do are exactly that. But I really feel for the dating person who doesn't know all these things. They don't know. Are they a good texter? Do they want to talk on the phone? All that stuff that you kind of have to learn. And I'm not saying it's not fun to learn all those things, but when you're waiting for a response from somebody, and you're not getting it, especially very early in the relationship to where maybe you went out a couple times and you may think they're ghosting you when maybe they're not ghosting you at all. And then it'll go through your head, should I text them because I haven't heard from them? Do you text them again? And then you're thinking, oh, I'm bugging them. I'm looking desperate. Ugh, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. And I am so glad that I am not in that anymore. I am so, so glad. I do not envy people who are in the online dating world. I could do a whole video on online dating too. I tell you I could. But anyway, like I always say, use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without. Happy texting. Till next time. Bye.